now's a good time to start. So, yeah, good to have you guys. Victor, thank you so much for coming on. Payne, Dow, thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, we're just here to talk shop about the DeFi and crypto market. Not anything too specific. So I want to welcome you guys on. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Crypto World Radio. My name's Wavi. Today we're here with Victor, and we're here to talk about all things DeFi. It's going to be more of a casual space, so if you guys want to come on and join in the conversation, feel free to do so. And you'll be able to catch a replay of the space up on our YouTube channel. So yeah, feel free to retweet the space as well, so more people can join in and things like that. So yeah, Victor, thank you so much for coming on, bro. How are you feeling today, brother? Good to have you on, man. It was great speaking with you the other day.
Yep. Likewise, I feel energetic and energized, right? Talking to you and of course connected with Dow Chemis as well. Yeah, I'm feeling good, right? Overall, if you look at, a little bit of market update, you look at Bitcoin today. Everyone, despite still feeling unsure or, not sure whether they are feeling bullish or not, but Bitcoin is touching 30,000 almost, right? 29,000 plus US dollar per Bitcoin. And Ethereum has shoot back up to like 1,009. So if you were to think about it, right? Yeah, if it's a bear market, everyone is like waiting to dump on the retail. That would not be the case. So yeah, we are seeing a lot of positive sentiment in the market, right? I think I'm also a little bit of optimistically bullish, but let's see how it goes, right? After the Shanghai unlock this coming week, for the Ethereum upgrade, then we'll see whether how the market reacts.
Yeah, we got a lot of
Yeah, the
events.
Shanghai upgrade.
We got CPI, Shanghai, and then we have like two conferences. There's Consensus and ETH Tokyo. So
Not only that, remember there's actually this week there's another big conference in Hong Kong. I think 2 weeks ago there's a WOW summit in Hong Kong, but okay, that is small, right? But this week is actually organized by Wan Xiang Group. Wan Xiang is actually one of the original team that backs Ethereum even in 2016. I remember I went to the ETH DevCon in Shanghai. It was like their second DevCon, right? It's actually held in Shanghai, China. And the biggest backer for Ethereum back then, right, for Vitalik, right, is actually Wan Xiang Group. And of course, they are one of the core LP for Hashkey, right? And they are organizing a big, big event this week in Hong Kong. So a lot of huge stuff happening this week.
Victor, so what you guys do at ThirdFi, being that you guys help out projects from proof of concept to launch and all of those things, what are the developments that you are seeing in the background within the market that your average market participant aren't aware of at the current moment? Like, are you guys seeing more people wanting to build their own products on blockchain? Has the innovation slowed over the last 6 months? How's it been like being an individual that has sort of an insider perspective within the crypto market?
I think a lot of people, I think the sentiment for builder remains the same because 2 years, last year, after the whole crypto blew up, right, and of course the equity market, a lot of all these weed and people who are chasing fast money, they are dead, right? And it happens to us as well. So we have to figure out a way to pivot and make adjustment, right, as a builder. And if you can see, right, even when I was in ETH Denver 1 month ago, that ETH Denver was packed. If you go to the conferences and you go to the events, right, it's not those events whereby you can see a lot of people are launching GameFi with like, Shiba Inu fork token. It's not. It's actually a lot of like major players and a lot of startups are talking about tech. They are talking about adoption. They are talking about account abstraction. They are talking about building. They are talking about all these things, right? Nobody's talking about crypto price. Of course, some are there, but nobody is feeling very bearish. It's not like in the market out there when you look at token price, you feel depressed. It's not. So a lot of people are still building in the sense. I think that is still the same. The only thing that has slowed down is the investment. And of course, the a lot of all these projects who are just forking, right? Those projects will not be able to raise money and subsequently they'll die. But in terms of investment, the same thing too, right? We saw that happen right after that whole before Luna crash, right? That's where everything stops, right? And then from there onwards until today, it's just very, very slow in terms of investment. But in terms of builder, in terms of the request for people who actually wanted to have some sort of like DeFi or crypto solution, right, is still there. Every time when we actually, from ThirdFi perspective, we actually request a lot of requests from the startup founders and builders, right, who are actually looking towards to have a easier to use solution for them. But of course, the adoption will take some time, and then I think the whole general market is a little bit slow. But as I mentioned, I'm a little bit optimistic, bullish.
And Victor, one of the things that the market is sort of pricing in now, even with all this price action, is that a lot of people are now staying on Ethereum as their home base and navigating through the market on layer.
I can't hear you, Wabi. I think you
Oh,
cut out.
sorry, guys. I'm not sure what happened there, but I was
You were
saying that
talking
one of
about
the
layer
things that
two.
yeah. Like a lot of the market participants that have survived 2022, which I consider a black swan, regardless of what other people say. I mean, you had the biggest hedge funds fall, you had the top centralized exchanges fall, and if none of that would have happened, I honestly doubt we would have broken 35K, 40K even, dude. I think we just would have had like your traditional equities drawdown go from 69K to 35, 40K, and that's that. I truly believe that like we would have still been in the super cycle had it not been for that. But everyone's entitled to their own opinions, right? So where I'm getting at with this, Victor, and we were speaking about this privately, and it's like the market is getting rid of its dilution effects with where there's so many of these alt layer ones that really do the same thing, and when activity gets high, the bridges get hacked, the chain ends up being slowed down and all that stuff. We saw what happens with Solana and Harmony and stuff like that. um so in say like in a couple of years, do you believe that we really will have all of these chains all at once, or do you feel like they would be more consolidated, and how far out do you see like your prediction coming true as far as what I just said goes?
I think there's going to be several phases, right? It will be definitely several phases, but there's going to be some winners and it's going to be some usual the losers. Why do I say that? I'm using analogy to explain this. If you think about, um, the first wave, right, of .com, before Google wins the market, right, there is so many search engines, correct? Excite, Alta Vista, Lycos, AOL, and much more that I don't know, I don't even remember their name now. And of course, Yahoo too. But when Google actually dominated the market share and become top of the mind for every other people who search, then Google win and dominated the market share, right? But it doesn't mean that there are some other search engines such as DuckDuckGo or like Bing, right, are there. If you look at Japan market, right, Japan.co.jp is Yahoo.co.jp still remains one of the big search engine in Japan, right? Not Google. So I'm sure that a specific market, right, their specific niche that they actually dominated is the same thing as the blockchain, right? Then the second analogy will be the same as the mobile. You know, I went through all of this, the wave, right, which is why I'm very, very optimistic, bullish about Web3. I've been in this space since 2017. Right? I'm really looking from a tech point of view. If you look at the mobile perspective, the same thing too. Because when it started, right, before Apple take over the whole smartphone and flat screen smartphone, right, there's a lot of smartphones, but the user experience is bad. But of course, when a newcomer comes in, right, shit, then Apple did dominated the traffic sales, and they even killed off some of the other brands, right? I'm not sure whether there's going to be some odd layer ones like Solana is going to be there, but nobody knows. But if they were to continue to down this trajectory of layer one, layer two, and more adoption through the account abstraction and a lot of this innovation, right, potentially we could see that Ethereum will be like the Apple, right, in the space, or like Google for search engine. Then after that, if you look at that, then as I mentioned, right, yeah, if Apple dominated this most profitable, Apple software and ecosystem, but it's not stop Android, right? There's another player. Then on top of that, right, yeah, that is an operating system, but if you look at like the hardware stuff, there's so many OEMs from China, right, and like Samsung and everything else are operating there, right? Maybe they're using the same EVM base. So if you use the analogy, you can see the hardware is there, different type of consensus mechanism, right? POS layer one, layer two, and just different way of doing, the blockchain calculation itself. But if you look at then the consensus, right, it could be EVM. EVM could be still the operating software for all the virtual machine, right, for blockchain. So then Ethereum could be theoretically be Android, right? Everybody's using that model to bridge around all these traction and transaction, right? There could be some smaller market, in my opinion, like for example, right? Maybe a Middle East, maybe like Japan, or China could have their own chain. And if you global domination, maybe they will not win, right? But it's going to be profitable. Using this to continue this example, right? If you think about right, the stablecoin market perspective, in US, nobody used TRC20 Tron as a medium of exchange, but in Southeast Asia and Middle East, TRC20 USDT is one of the most used stablecoin, and on TRC20, right, globally, their payment transaction is one of the highest in the world because everyone else in the world don't have access to like the USDC, right? They would rather use USDT. Don't know why, but it happens, right? Even in Southeast Asia or even in the Middle East, and these countries actually need this technology, right, to succeed. So it's just not for like one specific market, which is US. I think that is my thought process around it.
Victor, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this thought process is what had you guys starting to build out what is now known as ThirdFi, where you sort of consolidate a lot of these ideas into one, right?
Yep. It's not like something we just thought of over there, right? We actually have a real solid reason. So great question. I will not bore everyone with the detail, but just like the highlights, right? So we have been building DeFi for the last 2 years, right? Of course, we even venture into metaverse and it's still there, right? But the traction is not there. So what happened is then we realized, right, what was the problem is the current DeFi market of Web3, right, is not lacking of DeFi primitive or another NFT, PFP project or another GameFi, right? There are so many founders building on this. But the problem is actually access. Why? Can you imagine that for any companies or any fintech or any, I'm not even talking about financial institution, I'm talking about just startups, right, or a fintech company who actually have like, I don't know, 50 people raise a series A. Can you imagine you need to ask that startup, right? Hey, if you are doing Web 2, right? If you want to get the Web 3, you need to hire a dedicated Web 3 team and you need to spend 200,000 to half a million just to be able to create one, app or integration with Web 3 and then get it audited and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't make sense because that's not how businesses and startups and even banks and financial institution works. They are not going to spend the kind of money to test something. They cannot report it to their investors that cannot get what approval. Generally speaking, right, I used to work in corporate too. You actually need to create some POCs at the cheapest cost. Even a mobile app, when I was working in a bank, we spent more than 200,000 just to create a proof of concept mobile app to get the heads and the C-level directors, right, to approve and says that, hey, this project is great, let's put more money into it. That's how organization works, right? Same thing with the crypto and the fintechs. Today, if you look at a fintech company, as I mentioned, they will not be spending half a million to do so because it doesn't make sense. But if there's a solution that reduces their cost by 90% to get them on board, that makes sense. Same for developer. If you want to get a Web2 developer who have very proficient into machine learning or data science with Python, Ruby, JavaScript, MERN stack, and PHP, which is still a lot of people are using that in the other parts of the world. If you ask them to go and learn Solidity, Rust, and Move, right, they need to take 6 months just to get in. And if you look at what happened today, everybody is going to AI. So if you force developers to use languages that they are not familiar with or need to learn, it is a lot of learning barrier for them. Why not create stuff that make it easy for them? And that is where we came from. We realized the market is not lacking of DeFi primitive, as I mentioned, not lacking of DEXs, not lacking of layer 1, layer 2 protocol. They have a lot of money. But what they lack of is actually user adoption. And to do so, you need to create the picks and shovel, the tools to enable the developers and all these Web2 startups for them to onboard to Web3 easy. You cannot do that by asking them to learn about smart contract, deploy it on testnet and mainnet without the necessary tools. And that's where we discover after we talk to a lot of startups from like the accelerator space, from Outlier Ventures, from Techstars, where we are incubated. And then we realize, right, that is actually where the problem is. You'll be surprised, that a lot of them are even asking, hey, can I use your API to receive the fiat to crypto and on-off ramps just with your API? I say, yes, that's what we are trying to solve. Even with that alone, they are struggling. And we actually build beyond that right now. Right? So we know that this is actually a strong need that is actually stemmed from our own frustration during building the DeFi protocols, right, and gaining adoption. So that is actually what we found.
So what do you think
Yeah, I
what do you think the solution is to like all these devs who don't know Solidity or Move or Rust or these different languages? Like what was the conclusion that you came to as far as the easiest way to break down that barrier?
Yeah, because our team is top tech team builders ourselves, right? Yeah, create REST API and as open source SDK that is actually not in Solidity, Rust, or Move. Just create SDK, right, in JavaScript and then API in REST API, so that they will be able to use the API to get into Web3 or in DeFi, right, in our case. And then they would be able to actually access to all the DeFi solution. For example, multi-chain cross-chain swap. The cross-chain component, we are working on it, but multi-chain swap is there. You can actually find the best price just from our API across 10 different chains if you want to buy programmatically through decentralized finance. Then on top of that, you might want to say, hey, I want to do some strategies, right, whereby I'm able to borrow some money to short the market, right, via borrowing and lending market. Yeah, you can do it right now manually. You can actually, connect your wallet via Gnosis or Cold and Hot Wallet, create your own script and trading board to connect to centralized and decentralized, right? But if you want to truly do it automatically, but it's still non-custodial, there's no way to do that. You have to build the whole infrastructure yourself. For example, on that, right, you can do those the stuff as well. So creating use cases from different DeFi components that connects to different RPC nodes and different mechanics, right, different tools and these picks and shovels, like these tools to enable these traders, these builders, right, to access to DeFi easily is our goal. Which is why our main focus, right, is to create use cases through the user feedback and the developer feedback. What do they need? And we create MEP for it, and then we get their feedback to continue to improve on it. Right? So we use the simple to access approach to do so.
guys, so not to change the topic, but I do want to entertain this. Victor, I see on your tweet you were alluding to the fact that that the next bull market might be fueled by stable coins, and that was done during the bottom, right? So I commend you for that thesis, because now, over the last few weeks, everyone knows the news out of China that that their digital yuan is out and all that stuff. And during the panic of Silvergate, when you had grown men act like pansies, saying that, like, the world as we know it was going to end and all those things, we just mega pumped after that. And I'm not sure, like, how anyone could not be bullish outside of, like, some stupid story they heard from some pessimistic individual that just is not really happy in life. But anyways, I wanted to know, Victor, given that you have a vast amount of experience in crypto, and that you used to do some work.
Hey, Bobby, I think the last part you missed it,
Oh,
right? You mentioned something about I'm doing some work.
so sorry, guys. I cut off. Where did I last finish? I'm sorry, guys.
You were mentioning something about where you were
Oh,
saying that the
oh yeah,
CBDC and the
Hawaii.
bear
Yeah.
market.
So, like, during your time at Hawaii, was your statement that you have on your pin profile something that was being entertained? Like, hey guys, in 5 years or so, we might have to put in some, like, CBDC pairs. I know that's something that's sort of in the rumor mill in America, right? And sort of like
Yeah.
my tinfoil hat, at least here in America, it's not really that big of a deal when it comes to crypto, really, given that crypto is a global asset. But, like, there might be a case to be made that USDC, you might have to, like, KYC, like your MetaMask or whatever wallet that you use to use it, and American citizens might have to just use, like, CBDC pairs to purchase the cryptocurrency of choice. So I wanted to know, basically, like, were these conversations entertained during your time at Hawaii?
Yeah, so there are two questions to that, right? The first thing, yeah, so some background as well. When I was building my DeFi startup along the way, I also angel invest, right? Yeah, same as a lot of us, right? Then what happened is that, yeah, maybe because of through warm introduction, I got recruited as a VC advisor for Hobby, right, in Singapore. And because they need somebody not in China who understand actually the space from ground up, right? And who are able to spot project and have the founders, I was actually recruited as an advisor. So then I went in there, I stayed there for like until Justin Sun decided to take over, then I left because they're also doing a lot of restructuring during then. But yeah, that's the first thing. The second thing you are mentioning about whether this kind of CBDC was mentioning that. Actually, not really. You know, why do I say that? There are a lot of different players within the in the organization itself. Same thing with Binance. I have actually a lot of friends working in Binance too and or Hobby and Chinese exchanges. What happened was all these organizations, right? They are working towards something is their job prospect, but they are really short-term focused. You'll be surprised at the short term of their focus. I think Binance maybe is the one that actually thinks slightly long term. They really want to onboard the next billion people, the next 10 billion people to onboard, right? Well, not 10 billion. I mean, the world doesn't have that much. The next billion people, or like the more people to really to in Web3, right? I think that is CZ's move because they will dominate the liquidity. But for hobby, not really. They are just thinking about making money. That is how I realized about the Chinese exchanges, right? They will try to be as compliant as possible to the Chinese exchanges as much as possible, with exception to Binance, because Binance, CZ is not Chinese, right? It's a Canadian Chinese. So, but for Binance, right, the CEOs and the management, all of them are Chinese. So, which is why they actually take it, they are a little more short term. I'm not going to sugarcoat, right? You can feel it. Anything they thought about is that, hey, how can you bring revenue to the company? Essentially, those are the main discussion between the group. So I think CBDC for them is just a high level discussion. They never even put it into like KPIs. But I stated that statement is because I'm talking to a lot of investors as part of my role and my own startup anyway. Same thing, right? Then I realized, right, I asked myself this question. This is the second part, right? What am I thought on like the CBDC that I posted on my profile? I believe that the next catalyst for the bull market, right? Despite all this halving and stuff and all this new technology, right? One of the reasons why it will gain more attention is because of CBDC. Why? Because if you think about from the perspective of like what are the stuff, a lot of people are talking about real world assets. I actually don't think so. Why? The real world assets has been discussion for the last, I don't know, since 2016, right? Nothing happened. It's always a discussion because it's really hard to do real world assets when you need to be compliant and do your KYC and AML, right? But speculative stuff and stuff that can actually enable people to aware that they need to own more digital assets, right? And actually gain more money from it is the one that is going to spearhead the catalyst for this bull run. If you think from the last bull run, right, it's all DeFi use and NFTs. And where does the yield come from? It's just from like putting your liquidity into like different AMM pools and DeFi protocols. Then of course the zero interest rate in US economy, right, global, everything is just suddenly push up to like 69,000 at the top. So if you think about it, a lot of this stuff actually happens because of all these component. Some people are talking about GameFi as well. Or GameFi is going to bring in the next million people. I disagree too. Why? Roblox is actually even trying to ban it. These platforms are making so much money. Why the hell do they want to actually release some of their profit back to the community? It sounds nice, but I don't think that is going to be the bull run. The bull run is going to be coming something that make people aware that they need to buy more. How to do so? CBDC. If you think, like you say just now, if the US market, the Chinese yuan, somebody are talking about it, launching soon, and a lot of governments are talking about this. Would you be surprised if US government decided to launch their, I think somebody was talking about it, but everyone is denying it, all these kind of centralized currencies, right? If it actually happens, everybody else in the world is going to follow. Why shouldn't they follow? US government have shown it that everybody can do that. And when it happens, everybody's good. A lot of people who are aware of the risk they actually get left out of that system is going to actually transfer some of their cash into crypto. That actually happens in China, right? If you think about it, why China banned Bitcoin and banned cryptocurrency is because they realize all this money is being tracked. They need to remove their money from the system ASAP in order not to get taxed and get confiscated by the government. In fact, I think the Chinese businesses are one of the most capitalistic businesses in the world because everyone just care for their own. So what happened is all these miners and all these people, rich guys, they are just transferring their money out and migrate to overseas, right? I'm sure you guys were aware. There's so many Chinese crypto entrepreneurs in the Bay Area too, and in Singapore, so many of them. Why? Because they want to escape the system. I would think that would be the same thing that will happen once the government, launch their CBDC. That's my statement.
Victor, so you believe that inevitably, like when the Fed, reverts back to zero interest rates and all of those things, there will be that flight to safety to Bitcoin, just as we saw, sometime, I think it was like early March, right when Silicon Valley and all that stuff was occurring. Everyone's like, holy shit, I need to go into Bitcoin. We saw that massive pump. Do you believe that like the next cycle, when that happens, will truly be, as I like to call it, the super cycle?
That's why we need a catalyst, right? I believe that is why. I mean, yeah. Let's give a space to Dow Chemist. He's been raising his hand. Right? I'll finish this one. That is why, in my opinion, right, why the U.S. government is clamping down so hard on all these on ramps, right? From signature banks, Silvergate, Silicon Valley Bank, because these are some of the gateways to crypto. Now they have removed it. Then what are the other options? You have to go back to the big guys. The big guys is the one that will provide you the access. And of course, they're still trying to clamp down. And then remember, they're trying to ban Coinbase as well. And they remove all this staking because of security. They even serve the notice right to Binance. I think they're trying to push back because they know that this is going to disrupt their plan. So the plan, I'm not sure what is that, but they want to keep the system, the money within the system as much as possible. Like, so nobody knows what is the next step. But in my opinion, like, these are one of the classic examples, right, that happen. And I think there's a high chance they will happen. Because today, think about it. The If you really smart, talk to the managers, right, the money guys, the money managers, even some of these guys from Wall Street or public listed company, where would they want to invest? The stock market is overpriced, is very volatile, and on top of that, it's overpriced because the PE for all these stocks, right, high growth stocks are just ridiculous. And on top of that, right, it's actually a very proven model. And now the market is inversed. A lot of people just want to buy bond to trade for the growth, while the capital market, right, equity market is actually for the cash buyback, so that they can actually escape some of the taxes to get back some of their the cash. So all these things are kind of funny, It's not something that you will learn along the way in economics or finance, right? For the last, I don't know, decade or 2 decades. So things are changing, and I think that really there's going to be a big turn. And for the big turn to happen, right, you need catalyst. You need something to actually push and let people know that shit. We need to get out there because it's either making a lot of money or I think there's an escape to flight, right? Because from the zero interest rate. Of course, I believe that a lot of people are going to speculate on Shiba, Doge, and the next stupid coin, right? And maybe buy and do some stupid stuff. But you can't stop there, right? As long as the money comes in, then people have a choice, and you need to have some sort of like mechanics, right, to get them to on board. I think Coinbase is going to go up again. Why? Because it's only public listed company that actually have a legalized approach, or Kraken, right? Only like 2, 3 at most. So yeah, let's see how it goes. Yeah, Dow Chemist.
Well, yeah, we'll
I'm
pass
glad
it
that you
over.
brought up Coinbase. Real quick, yeah, I'm glad that you brought up Coinbase because I think their stock is probably like it's actually one of the things I'm the most bullish on for next cycle because they truly have an edge as a publicly
Yeah,
traded crypto exchange. Like
yeah,
that's just something that isn't replicated by any other exchange, and there's a level of trust seen with them. I feel like that any like other exchanges just simply can't live up to because they're not a publicly traded company. And so, yeah, I think Coinbase stock could outperform BTC if I'm being completely honest. It's very
Dude,
undervalued, but I'll
dude,
just say that.
Coinbase stock has a lower valuation than like the top
Then
10.
like Doge, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
It's stupid.
And
It's
what's
stupid.
weird?
It
What's
makes
weird?
no
I'll say
sense.
this. I'll say this, and then like I'll pass it over to Dow to be respectful. But it's so odd that like I understand that some individuals are more pessimistic than others, but like when it comes to crypto and specifically, right? And you look at some individual names like MicroStrategy. Here's a funny statistic for you guys. My bad. MicroStrategy. Um, they own one out of every 150 Bitcoin in circulation. And the amount of Bitcoin that they have on their balance sheet is more is more than the Bitcoin that's actually going to be produced over the next 2 years. So why would you not? Why wouldn't you, right? As an individual that like, oh man, I'm kind of scared of going into crypto. I don't want to leave my money on exchange. I don't want to deal with hardware wallets. Why wouldn't you have exposure to names that own the underlying asset in mass? Why wouldn't you own Coinbase stock? Why wouldn't you own MicroStrategy stock? Like, why wouldn't you? And I feel that, as a Gen Zer, right, and 25, like, why would I listen to an individual that has never made a crypto transfer in their life because of something that they heard from some coworker that used to work at some finance firm in the 80s? Why would I listen to that? Like, you have to surround yourself with individuals that come from like the tech boom, right? And that's why I appreciate the connections that I've made here on the Twitter platform, such as Holder of the Fire, a good friend of the show. So yeah, MicroStrategy and Coinbase stock over the next 2-3 years, I think those are some pretty good names to own for the people that don't want to open a Coinbase account or crack an account or anything like that. But I think that like right now, crypto is sort of like in its BlackBerry stage, where it's sort of like a niche. Like at the moment, if you go to any major city in the US, you're gonna see some graffiti from like, Bored Apes or Doodles or some other blue chip NFT, right? It's almost like unavoidable at this point. You're gonna hear it in conversation. But with that being said, I'm gonna pass it over to Dow Chemist. I'm done with my rant. Dow, floor is all yours, brother.
Thanks, guys, and great conversation. Great to have you, Victor, and SEC in the audience as well. Quick question for you guys, right? You guys touched on it a little bit around like would you see like the next adoption being around CBDC most likely? So we saw like the first wave of crypto adoption, in my opinion, around the ICO era. Developers had like an easy standard, the ERC20, to build all kinds of really cool protocols that we still use today. And then around 2020, we had like the NFT boom. And once again, we had the standard, the ERC 721, that kind of made it really easy for people to think about non fungible. And then we had exchange and infrastructure. So it looks like every big wave that we had in crypto was around a new standard for developers, right? So, in your opinion, is that going to be a similar third wave of adoption? Is it going to be around KYC, around on board, how do they call it, on ramps and off ramps, or specifically CBDC? If you had to think of where this third wave of new standard for developer that's going to bring on this new massive adoption, where do you think it would be?
I'll answer that, right? You are absolutely right, Gareth. Because in the this is my observation, just my opinion, right? Again, mirroring what Dow Chemist is talking about. I realized this when I look at this. That is why I don't think real world assets or GameFi is going to be the catalyst. Let me give you the real example. In the early days before the ICO boom, the chain that was hottest back then is all mining chain. You can even go to certain websites, right, that actually measure mining hash power or Bitcoin Talk Forum. You'll be able to see, right, this new chain launching every time. Litecoin, Monero, Dogecoin was launched, all of it back then. It's all a bunch of memes or somebody come up with some new mechanism, right, to actually allow a lot of all these mining mechanism, either from graphic card or from an A6 CPU, right, it's just to mine coins. Because for the first time in this technology of cryptocurrency, you can actually have enabled by just having a mining or PC or machine or graphic card, you were able to generate money. The money is speculative because it's new, right? That's why it opened up the first wave of the crypto bull market. That was like pre 2016, before the ERC's 20 standard. So what happened was that everybody was like launching as I mentioned, Dogecoin, Monero, Litecoin, and much more. I don't even recall whether they're still alive today. Then what? Then after that, right? Remember those websites were talking about mining power, hash power, what kind of algorithm they are using. So in order to connect, you can measure your script for mining, Clayton software mining. I actually did mining in the early days as well. Then on the second wave of bull run, you can saw that right, the new technology, like what Gareth was talking about, is ERC20. It's not about because it's easy to use alchemist. It's actually because ERC20 created a speculative component with that technology. That is why that speculative component spurs the degens to go all in to bet and make money, right? Of course, in the early days, right, nobody understand the technology. What the hell is this ERC20? That I wrote a white paper, you can call me the money, I just create a token, I just put in a market, and I go list in a certain exchanges, people can trade on it, and I become $1 billion protocol. Like Tron, during then, right, any other of these big guys, even yours, using the same model, right, and BNB chain Binance as well. But of course, that is the second technology, right? Second bull market. The third bull market was actually after the halving as well. The same thing. It was DeFi. Why? For the first time ever, right, somebody created a use case of actually decentralized contracts that you can actually do trading not with P2P, but with over the contract. So essentially, like, you can trade with the contract itself through the smart contract, even though it's ERC20 standard, but you're trading with the contract, right? So you create a very speculative yield that can offer you like 100% APY or 1000% APY, right? In order for you to attract you. So that's why the DeFi yield farming started and bringing all the finance guys, right? People understand that. And then, of course, there's a lot more happening back then. There's derivatives trading, there's like options trading now on DeFi and different chain. And of course, like what Gareth was mentioning, ERC721 and ERC1155, right, which is the NFT standard. And again, that contract exists in CryptoKitties, right? Remember, CryptoKitties was launched in like 2018. But what happened was it took 2 years. And Animoca was actually all in, right, bullish about NFT. But when it happens, right, was Sandbox, Animoca, and all of them become the next $1 billion company, right? Because just for that, because that ERC721, because of the bull market, the catalyst that enables it, right, as we mentioned, because after halving and then the zero interest, with that technology enables the awareness and speculative nature of the technology. Then after that, things go south, right? Bearish like now. Then people are really thinking about the developers now are thinking about what are the real use cases. So there will be some winners after the bull run at the bear market. In that case, right? Like for example, Polygon become one of the winner, and then you can see that of course Solana got hacked and all these things are just black swan. But you can see there's a lot of winners remaining, right? And these winners are actually there, and they will be there, right? Because there will be a lot of adoption and awareness on their branding, and of course the usage and utility. To further one step, Alchemist, I actually think that the next technology contract, right, that enables more adoption is actually the one that launched recently, ERC4337, account abstraction. Account abstraction, even though it's a very simple tool, but I think it's one of the catalysts, one of the reason why. For the first time, just with one contract on ERC standard, that the DApp or the developer or the startup could actually enable gasless transaction for the users. So the users don't even need to think about, hey, how much gas fees do I need to pay? The protocol could pay for their own. That already reduced one element, which is the users do not need to think about gas costs. That is one of the biggest component, right? If you need to ask somebody, hey, can you do a contract? But how much gas do I need? How much do I need to transfer? I feel very nervous while I want to send the money because like $20 per mint or $10. Nobody's going to do that unless it's highly speculative. But right now, account abstraction removes that complexity because of the gasless transaction, right? The second benefit is actually that batch transaction. Remember, we need to approve the contract, we need to mint the contract, or we need to swap the contract. You need to do like a couple of steps and you need to deposit somewhere. You need to approve another contract. You need to do so many steps just to be able to do so. And the user experience of doing that Web3 approval and transaction process through MetaMask, right, is shit, experience. ERC4337 solved that. One transaction that could be actually paid the gas fees from the developer, and then they can actually do all of that in one transaction. So the users need to do it, press OK, done. They don't even need to have gas fees. They don't need to click like approve and send transaction all the time. One standard, they're able to do all of that. And on top of that, there's another one. You can use social login. Right now, if for you to get in a new wallet, you need to remember your seed phrase and private key. With the ARC457, you can actually have social login. You can use your Twitter login or your Google login, and then you will be able to link that profile to your wallet. And you can even set it dual approval, right? That I need to approve from my Google login and then my phone to receive the SMS. Developers can do that with the standard, and then the users will be able to send a transaction gasless in one button. That is going to create the adoption, in my opinion, right? And of course, you need a catalyst, right, as I mentioned, right? I think the next catalyst is going to be the zero interest environment, and it's easy. But that is the tech.
Can you guys hear me? Am
Yeah,
I
we can
good?
hear
Yep.
you, brother.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. There's a bit of a thunderstorm here today. But yeah, man, I definitely agree with you with the zero interest rate environment and all that stuff. And I'm really anticipating the modular blockchain ecosystem and the LSD ecosystem, like Eigenlayer and stuff like that. And Dow Chemist and I were having an earlier conversation today. Dow, if you want to bring that up before you go, sort of like your small statement about why we're excited about Eigenlayer and how they're going to change the game, not only for things like privacy on a restaking aspect, but also when it comes to Oracle. So if you want to put that in there, feel free to do so, man.
Sure. And by the way, great answer, Victor. I agree with everything you said. And yeah, it's great to hear projects that are building the future of crypto, including Eigenlayer and ThirdFi. And the cool thing about Eigenlayer is you get the security of Ethereum, right? All the nodes that provide security for Ethereum right now can be reused, and they call that notion of restaking for other purposes, right? If you want to create your Oracle or bridge, or if you get more technical, like a sequencer for layer two, the great thing is Ethereum has the largest amount of security and largest amount of node, and so those nodes can choose to also use those nodes for those other purposes, and so it's going to make it increasingly safer to use bridges, to use oracles and sequencer and the data availability, and potentially they'll build those using ThirdFi. So yeah, I have to go real quick, but it was great to be on the panel, listen to you guys, and yeah, talk to you guys soon.
No doubt, man. God bless you, bro. You have a nice night, brother. Take care, man. See you
Thank you,
tomorrow,
Dal.
brother.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Victor, I wanted to ask you, so considering everything that you've said, do you think that layer twos are gonna be the solution? Like, do you think that's the most viable solution as far as to scaling Ethereum, or do you think that it's kind of like a trend as many of these things have come and gone?
I cannot make any great prediction, right? Although I can see the trend is moving there. Why? I think no matter what, the current generation of people, right, in the world today, not everyone is tech savvy. Seriously, ask our cousins and our mom and our aunts and uncles, right? How many of them actually understand even tech? They don't care. They only care what happened is that what they can use on. And in that perspective, right, as we talk about the CBDC, I believe that a lot of going to be private network in the future too. And all these bank consortiums and all these governments is have their own blockchain to remove and to centralize it. So their objective is not to create freedom money, right? It's not a money for everybody. Their objective is just to increase the efficiency of their banking system, which is run on dinosaur age, right? It's like paper and dab and even like checkbooks in US, right? This kind of technology happens 50 years ago, right? But they are still here today. So this blockchain tech, right, is going to help them. The distributed ledger technology and all this CBDC, right, is going to help them to be even more efficient in their centralized government operation, right? To ensure that all these monies are being monitored. We know it, right? Even in US Congress, right, they hate crypto not because of the crypto itself, but because they know that crypto is very speculative. A lot of people lose money, right? They want to be in control. If they say US government will release that, right, and is regulated, I doubt that anybody is going to be have trouble with crypto. It is just that crypto is out of their control. So, in my opinion, right, long term wise, there's going to be a lot of like all these centralized regulated. Even that's why this somebody I think Chris Black was mentioning about it that Coinbase layer 2 optimism chain called Base is actually highly centralized because it's only one node controlled by them and everything need to be approved by them, right? And in the future, they say that it's going to be KYC too. But are you going to say that they're going to die? Not necessarily. If they have money to bring it in, I think more banks are going to go with them too. So there's going to be some adoption over there. But the good thing is you actually being to onboard people into crypto itself. And then naturally, hopefully people will say that shit, I need to own some of my portfolio in Bitcoin rather than purely everything on CBDC and everything centralized by the government, right? Then you have more adoption of Bitcoin. So in my opinion, right, that whole regulated CBDC and all this private level by the banks and government is a stepping stone. It's very hard for you to get all these non-tech people, right, to be excited about layer twos. But in the short term, in the next bull run, I think it's going to be layer two. Why? As I mentioned, right, the account obstruction only happens currently on the Ethereum, right? And we can see ZK saying Arbitrum optimism has all the noise and news, right? There's some of them, like you say, even layer. There are some of them on different network as well, like Move, Sui, right? Sui, Aptos and stuff. They still have a lot of money. A lot of people are building on that. So I think this is going to be there. But whoever, I'm not sure, honestly speaking, I'm not sure which chain is going to dominate the whole TVL, right? I think it's going to be a mixture of all layer twos and the different layer ones too. So I think it's going to be a repeat of the last bull run, right? Where all this capital are just moving around. I feel that way.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate your take. Do you think that like the government is mad that they can't control crypto, or do you think that they truly like care about the people using it and that they're losing all this money? Because I mean, in the last couple of years, we've seen the stock market completely gamified, essentially, and I would say that the volatility is pretty akin to crypto at this point, and so it makes me question what the intentions of regulation really are. And I'd like to get your take
Oh,
on that.
I don't think it's actually about the stock market. I think they care more about the solvency, liquidity of these banks. You see, for the first time ever, Signature Bank, Silvergate Bank, First Republic, and all of these banks and Credit Suisse collapse overnight. Think about it. Credit Suisse is not, even if it is foreign owned, it's not a small bank. Of course, they have done a lot of fraud stuff as well, we know as well. I think they are concerned about the liquidity, not so much about how you guys invest. Why? Because these banks are essentially just paper money, right? We know it, right? That's why we bet on the thesis of Bitcoin. Because all these banks are essentially just taking 10%, even 0% of your collateral, of your money, and they start to mint money, right, to loans, to make money. And then suddenly they realize, with the government printed so much money, they own all this money into their liability, right? Yeah, because how bank works, right? I just learned that during the Silicon Valley Bank crashed. Because when all the VCs and all these startups and everybody have so much money, they just deposit the money in the Silicon Valley Bank. What happened? They have so many hundreds of billions. Because they are not the top four banks, right? These monies are actually being bought into, like, mortgage-backed security or the government bonds, right? Yeah, of course, when they buy during the low time, they are paying them 1.5 interest for 10 years, right? Remember? Then when the government increased the interest rate in order to combat the inflation, all of these banks are insolvent. I think they are more worried right now. If all this money, people have a breach to the crypto, right? All this money is going to escape from the system to go to the crypto, which is not controlled by them. Which means that it's the same thing as Chinese government. You know what? Give you a real example. That is why so many Chinese people figure out a way to mine Bitcoin and get the Bitcoin out of the country. Why? Because Chinese government, US is not the only government to actually mint all this money. The Chinese government mint money like crazy as well. That's why they are like, I didn't remember a few months back, before the Chinese open up, I think they just minted like 600 billion. Why? Because they need to spur the economy. And the only way to do that is mint money, right? Yes, of course, a lot of people get access to liquidity. They can spend, they can actually increase their salary, they can buy houses. Same thing in the US. But what happens is that they need so much money and people realize that, shit, the banks are actually insolvent. Why don't I take the money to buy something like Bitcoin? Because it's more safe. I can own my own money. And that's what banks don't want. Because you are actually letting the liquidity, the money that you printed, go out of the system that you can't control. That is actually where I think they are killing off all the off ramps, right? It's not the stock market. It's actually to protect the banks, I think, in my opinion.
And it's great that we're having this conversation and that we're pumping. Isn't it great? We're having this conversation and we're so enthusiastic about the next 2 years. And we're almost at 30K. And Michael Saylor's no longer underwater. The weekly trend on Bitcoin looks nice. We have amazing, innovative projects filling all their rounds. Some rounds are even oversubscribed. We also have Soy down here as always, bro. Shout out to Soy and the Neutron team. Those boys are awesome, man. Feel free to come up if you want, brother. And we love to see it, man. We love to see it. And yeah, it's been a great conversation. Truly been a great conversation, and where we're at in the next 18 months. That would, I mean, 18 months from now, October of 2024, that would put us like 5 or 6 months after the Bitcoin halving. And that's when things really get nice on the innovation side of things. And I agree with you on the GameFi side, Victor. I really tried to get into it. I tried to explore it, but it's sort of the truth. Like, why would Roblox allow someone else to obtain that market share, and things of that nature? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I think like if anyone wants to come up and join the conversation, feel free to do so. And if you guys are enjoying the conversation, feel free to follow us here at Because of Bitcoin and all things like that. My name's Wabi. I host these sort of spaces throughout the week with various founders, devs, and all stuff like that. We have Eigenlayer hosted on our spaces this Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. I know we touched about what they're doing, so might as well say it. And tomorrow we have Tone Garden and Rebase at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. Wednesday we have Gains Network. Shout out to all our boys at Arbitrum. Love supporting them and all that stuff. We have the guys from the Gains Network team Wednesday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. And also later on that day, we'll have a space with Noah Seidman and Joe Carlos at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Thursday, we'll have some people from Elrond, now known as Multiverse X. We'll be having their NFT platform, XO No FT and NFT, and the Elrond Mafia, and I forgot who else. I know it's someone from the Multiverse X team. And Friday, Eigenlayer at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Victor, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking shop with me and just more broader market discussion and things like that. And shout out to our listeners as well, and also to Dow Chemist. You guys can catch a replay of this on our YouTube channel. Victor, I want to thank you so much. It's been a lovely hour
Yeah,
speaking with
appreciate it,
you,
man.
and like knowing what you're all about and how you see the market and how you see the market moving forward, and some of your past experiences like in Hawaii and things like that. It's truly invaluable information, man. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming to talk shop, man. I really appreciate this opportunity. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone who participated. Victor, I hope you have a lovely rest of your stay in NYC. Thank you so much, brother. And all right, guys, we'll be back tomorrow, as I said, at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. Everyone, take care. God bless you. And you can find all of our spaces that are going to be scheduled through the week. I believe it's the latest tweet that we put out. Let me check real quick for you guys. If you know that's a retweet. Yeah, scroll somewhere. Just scroll down somewhere in our time, and you should see like our spaces throughout the week and all that stuff. So that's enough rambling from me, man. I'm gonna go eat. So peace out, everyone. Take care. God bless you. Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you so much.
Take care, brother.
Later, guys. Take care.